Hello. Nice to see you. How's it going? It's a tiara check. Oh, nice. What's for dinner? I'm fine. Like I said, tiara check. It's a new, well, it's not new exactly. It's new for the channel. I've had it for a while, but this is my first time wearing it on the channel. Leftover pasta and chicken. Nice. Nice. Ooh, very nice. Are those emeralds? No. It was like $9.99 from Amazon. They are not emeralds. I'm not even sure that they're supposed to look like emeralds. They're kind of blue green, so I don't know. They are a fancy gemstone that can only be found in the Fey realms, of which I am queen. hmm Princess? Duchess? Okay, I'm the Fey chambermaid, but somebody's got to do it. Ah, I like to think of myself as the queen of people's hearts, the people's princess. Hey, Abby Jean, it's a Aldi brand Diet Cola with a lemon wedge. Woohoo! Hey, Nicole, nice to see you. How's it going? Tiara check for those just joining. Uh, I am a Fae princess. I think it was I started at Fae Queen and eventually realized that I was like the Fae chambermaid, but it is an important job that needs to be done. Mhm. So, and the hair has been curled. Okay, so I originally was going to do this live stream about like cross genre recommendations. Like if you knew somebody was trying to get into reading mysteries, what would you recommend? If you knew they were trying to get into fantasy, what would you recommend? Science fiction, horror, romance, etc., etc., etc. However, I was assembling my list of fantasy and fantasy subgenres. Excuse me, I got like itchy nose. I think that means I'm going to kiss a fool. Anyway, fantasy subgenres. And I was like, I have got an insane number of books to talk about, and I want to hear what you guys have to say as well. So I decided to just make this fantasy. Nicole, I have a fever, so I am here resting. Probably won't say too much since I don't feel well, but sending my love and glad to listen along. Megan says, "Ooh, feel better, Nicole." I say that as well, and I am sending my love to you and virtual chicken soup or yeah, hmm or chicken taquitos, whatever it is that would help you in this time of need. Abby Jean says, "Oh no, Nicole, your boys shared. Get better." Yes, you teach them how to share, and this is how it comes back to bite you on the neck. Yep, they sure did, she says. You're like, Halloween candy? No. Cold germs? Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. Uh huh. Okay, so as I was saying, I ended up coming up with so many different subgenres and ideas for recommendations. And like I said, I also want to hear what you guys have to say. If I wasn't interested in a conversation and hearing what other people had to say, I'd just do this as like a regular recorded thing. Now that I know how to do that, sort of. So I decided to just make this one fantasy, and then next time it'll be probably science fiction and horror at the same time. Oh, by the way, I mentioned this during the midweek motivation, and I know Megan was there. I don't know who else was, but I am going to be doing midweek motivation. Is going to be every week because it doesn't require a whole lot of prep. I just basically need to decide what my own project is going to be, and then come up with a title and a thumbnail for that. Even lighting's easy because it's during the day, so I can use natural light. However, these live streams take a lot of prep, so I am dialing them back down to one every other week. So it'll be every other Monday at 7 p.m. Eastern. So just for an example, for this particular live stream, even after I limited it to just fantasy, I think if you add up the time I spent reading and rereading books and running around to libraries and so on, it probably came to at least 30 hours, maybe even 40. Now, going to libraries and reading, these are not chores for me. It's just that doing it to a deadline, I'd rather have 2 weeks rather than one. And otherwise, I'll just get burned out. I mean, it was one thing when I wasn't doing any recorded content, and when I was just doing live streams and I wasn't doing any recorded content, then it wasn't such a big deal. But now that I'm also trying to do recorded content and stretching my wings a little, it is a lot. It's a lot. Megan says, "Oh wow." So either she's witnessing the aurora borealis, or she's like, that's a lot of time to prep for a live stream. No wonder you want to do it every other week instead of every week. Mhm. So yeah, so that's the deal. That's every other week now for these, and then midweek motivation is every week because, like I said, there's not too much prep for it, and yeah, it's not because I'm not enjoying it. Yeah, Megan says it's a lot of time. Aurora borealis at this time of year in this part of the country, located entirely within my kitchen. There's a Simpsons deep dive for you. So, Megan says, LOL, this is good for me to know before I get into making videos. Yeah, I mean, again, going to libraries and reading books that's kind of what I do anyway. So that part of it's not so much the time as like trying to do it. And like this weekend, I spent just like reading nothing but fantasy and trying to get all the reading done, as much reading as possible done. And it got to be a little not exactly burdensome, but I'm ready to read something that's not fantasy, especially since this is not necessarily my genre. So it's remarkable that I came up with as much stuff as I did, considering that this is not a particular favorite of mine. So, but I came up with some recs that I think are good, and I'd like to hear what other people have to say, as I keep saying, And so, okay, so are we ready to start talking subgenres and recs, or do people want to talk about the general nature of trying to get into a new genre, and also what experience do people have with reading fantasy? Megan says ready. Okay. Anyway, like I said, if anybody wants to share what their experience is with reading fantasy, or their thoughts about like what it feels like to try a new genre, or to try to encourage a friend to try a new genre, then speak up and I will start in. Now I have several subgenres, and a lot of them, there's a lot of overlap. So, and also if you've read any of these books, feel free to chime in. Maybe it worked for you, maybe it didn't. Megan says fantasy was my first love. Fantasy was my first love of reading with Harry Potter. Okay. Yeah. I mean, when I was a kid, I read the Oz books. I loved the Oz books and Chronicles of Narnia to an extent. Yeah, and the kind of cozy fantasy, I guess you could call it, of Edward Eager, Half Magic, and Knight's Castle. It's Knights with a K, like the guys who go around doing stuff. Okay, and we so anyway, so like I said, if anybody wants to chime in, maybe these books worked for you, maybe they didn't. Maybe you have other recs to make. And like I said, these subgenres, there's a lot of overlap. So yeah. So I thought I would start with low fantasy, and my understanding of what low fantasy is that it's basically our world, but with some magical elements to it, or I guess there's probably a lot of overlap with historical fantasy and urban fantasy. But okay, Here we go. So, and this one, this might be historical. I read this book several years ago. I didn't have time to reread it. I remember really liking it. And that is The Invisible Library by Genevieve Cogman. Okay. I don't know if I should read all of the summaries or let me know. Anyway, this one is about a sort of oh, Abby Jean says, before I found romance, I read classics, fantasy, and sci-fi. Brandon Sanderson's Mistborn series was a fun ride back then. I'm not a fan of him now, though. Okay, yeah, Brandon Sanderson, that's one of those authors that I think I've read one book by him, but it was really much more science fiction than fantasy. It was like a standalone. I can't remember what it was called. And it was okay. It wasn't super long. But when I look at these fantasy authors with their giant series that are 403 volumes long, and each volume has 600 pages, and I'm like, okay. Oh, and Megan wants to know, oh, why not? I love him. Anyway, so I have this, The Invisible Library by Genevieve Cogman. And should I go ahead and read summaries or? Megan says, yes, that's fair. The length of big books is a lot. Well, I mean, I like some big books, and I cannot lie. You other mothers can't deny that when Judith Grants writes about a lot of shopping and sex. Well, anyway, yeah, I'm there for it. Okay, Megan says, I'd like to hear the summaries. Okay. Oh, by the way, the whole thing about length, that was my reason for not reading Brandon Sanderson. Abby Jean's probably got her own reasons. One thing any librarian will tell you, the truth is much stranger than fiction. Irene is a professional spy for the mysterious library, that's library with capital L, a shadowy organization that collects important works of fiction from all the different realities. Most recently, she and her enigmatic assistant, Kai, have been sent to an alternative London. I should tell you, there is going to be traffic noise because I am kind of warm. And the alternative is just taking off clothing. And you do not want that. YouTube does not want that. I don't want that. Nobody wants that. Abby Jean says, well, mainly because I don't love his representation of female characters. It's not super harmful, but I just don't like it. Yeah. It's tough. Because sometimes you can read past it, sometimes you can't. Okay. Most recently, she and her enigmatic assistant Kai have been sent to an alternative London. Their mission, retrieve a particularly dangerous book. The problem, by the time they arrive, it's already been stolen. London's underground factions are prepared to fight to the death to find the tome before Irene and Kai do, a problem compounded by the fact that this world is chaos infested, the laws of nature bent to allow supernatural creatures and unpredictable magic to run rampant. To make matters worse, Kai is hiding something, secrets that could be just as volatile as the chaos-filled world itself. Now Irene is caught in a puzzling web of deadly danger, conflicting clues, and sinister secret societies, and failure is not an option. Because it isn't just Irene's reputation at stake, it's the nature of reality itself. Woo, woo, that puts things in perspective. I seem to recall that this is the start of a series. This is the only book I've read so far of that series. I'm kind of like mentally keeping that in my back pocket for a rainy day, along with a whole bunch of other books. But it's like I said, it's been several years since I read it. I remember liking it. And yeah, that's what that is. Okay, there's been some comments. Megan says, I checked the Invisible Library out from the library before, but I never got to reading it in time. Excited to try this one day. Yeah. And she says it, Abby Jean. Oh, okay, I can see that. Yeah. Okay, so moving on, we have another library book, The Midnight Library by Matt Haig. Oh, this edition of The Invisible Library is 330 pages long and copyright 2016. I am proud of myself for remembering without having to be reminded. And Nicole Carta says, I have that on my TBR, Midnight Library. Okay, so this one is 288 pages long. And this is interesting. It's still set to British standards, so like single quotes instead of double quotes and stuff like that. I don't know about the spelling. And this is copyright 2020. Nicole says, my cousin picked it for us to read, and we don't read anything alike. LOL. Do I have to say haha and LOL? A dazzling novel about the choices that go into a life well lived. Between life and death, there is a library. Up until now, Nora Seed's life has been full of misery and regret. She feels that she has let everyone down, including herself, but things are about to change. When she finds herself in the Midnight Library, she has a chance to make things right. The books in the Midnight Library enable Nora to live as if she had done things differently. Each one contains a different life, a possible world in which she made different choices that played out in an infinite number of ways, affecting everyone she knew as well as many people she never met. With the help of an old friend, she can now undo every decision she regrets as she tries to work out her perfect life. But things aren't always what she imagined they'd be, and soon her choices place the library and herself in extreme danger. Before time runs out, she must answer the ultimate question: what is the best way to live? This is kind of like a way to have a philosophical exploration. So in some ways, it's kind of like reading a philosophy textbook almost. And so it does have that magical realism, sort of fantasy, alternate universes stuff vibe going on, but it's also kind of philosophical, but in a very accessible way. Okay, comments to catch up on. Abby Jean says, I hated the Midnight Library. I don't know if that's crying or that's crying. I'm so sorry. Nicole, I'm worried. I think maybe I need to find a way to get out of reading with her. LOL, I haven't liked any of the books she has picked. I don't know. Me? Abby Jean? Somebody else? I don't know. Abby Jean says, well, don't do it just because of me. You might still like it, LOL. Nicole says, main characters sounds wishy-washy, and that is going to irritate me. Yes, that you have hit the nail on the head, is that yes, it is going to be wishy-washy, but I think that's part of the whole vibe is like, you can keep trying to tweak things and keep trying to make things perfect, and that way lies madness. So if you already think that, then maybe that's not the lesson you need to take from this book, and maybe you don't need to read the book. Nicole says, oh, her cousin. Okay. Okay. Well, like I said, I mean, if you already just listening to the summary think that Nora sounds super duper wishy-washy, then you're not going to be into it, I don't think. Maybe you and your cousin can have a movie night where you watch Sliding Doors with Gwyneth Paltrow, if you've ever seen that. Or maybe you've already seen it and you're like, oh no, my cousin loved it and it sucked. That was a very, very dignified way of expressing that idea that I just had. Okay, so that's Midnight Library. Your mileage may vary with all of these things. Okay, so I guess if somebody had recommended that to Abby Jean as her first fantasy read, then she would have just been like, no, that not only do I not want to read fantasy, I don't want to read fiction at all. From now on, it's just the newspaper headlines and government documents, like driver's license applications. Nicole says, I think you hit something smart there. I can move to movie suggestions with her, not books at all. Yeah, because then, like, you know what, your time commitment is like 90 minutes to 2 hours. And I was like, yeah, let's watch Sliding Doors instead of reading the Midnight Library. So I'm out a couple of hours, says Nicole. Exactly. Yeah. And yeah. Okay, so one more from this category. I think, again, there's so much overlap, and that is Every Heart a Doorway by Shannon McGuire. And I think this is an excellent entry point for people because it's short. It's like 170 pages. And Megan says, I think when trying a new genre, it's good to try and find something that blends with what you love with what you want to try. Nicole says, I hated that book, LOL. Oh no, now I'm on her list. She's like, No, it's Sock Marionette and my cousin, and I liked it. I reread it. I read it a few years ago, and I reread it this morning, and I actually liked it better upon rereading. Abby Jean says, "Yes." Megan says, "Oh no, I really want to read that too." Abby Jean says, "Yes, Megan, that's the best way to get people into romance." Yeah, and Megan says there are so many types of fantasy. And Abby Jean says, I really want to try Shannon McGuire. Nicole, it sounds amazing and like just the thing I would like. Something about it really turned me off. Abby Jean says, I do actually like some fantasy. There's a missing verb there. Anyway, like I said, I read it a few years ago and I remember liking it. And I reread it this morning and I was like, yes, I still like this. I think that the reason I think this is a good entry point is that it was like the missing verb. Most people are familiar with the basic idea. Let me read the summary for those of you who might still be interested. Eleanor West's Home for Wayward Children. No solicitations, no visitors, no quests. Children have always disappeared under the right conditions, slipping through the shadows under a bed or at the back of a wardrobe, tumbling down rabbit holes and into old wells and emerging somewhere else. But magical lands have little need for used up miracle children. Nancy tumbled once, but now she's back. The things she's experienced, they change a person. The children under Miss West's care understand all too well, and each of them is seeking a way back to their own fantasy world. But Nancy's arrival marks a change at the home. There's a darkness just around each corner, and when tragedy strikes, it's up to Nancy and her newfound schoolmates to get to the heart of things, no matter the cost. Now, I think the reason I was thinking that this would be a good gateway is that most people, even if they don't read fantasy, have never read fantasy before, or have seen The Wizard of Oz, or Alice in Wonderland, or Chronicles of Narnia. Or maybe they had they were assigned those books in school or something. So they're familiar with the idea of portal fantasy, and this answers the question of what happens to those kids when they come back from the portal fantasy world. Okay, catching up on comments now. Megan says, I find middle grade fantasy is a good place for some because it's often connected to the real world and is fast-paced and exciting. Nicole says, something about this was very much not middle grade. At least that's how I remember it. And Megan says, oh no, I didn't mean this is middle grade. I don't think every heart a doorway is supposed to be. And Nicole smiles. It's not. Some libraries you'll find it in the adult fiction. The library I checked it out from, it was in YA for whatever reason. But yeah, sometimes it's an adult, sometimes it's YA. It's definitely not middle grade. It deals with some difficult topics, and it's also a lot of allegorical for people with different gender and sexual identities. So, yeah. In fact, some of the characters are explicitly have different sexual and gender identities. Abby Jean says, I like portal fantasy because we are learning about the world with the character rather than getting long info dumps. Yeah, that's nice. The other thing I was going to say is that YA is frequently a good entry point too, because usually they are also fast paced, easy to read. Maybe middle grade might be, for some adult readers, it might be a little too, I don't know. I don't want to say immature because, it's middle grade. Just because it's aimed at younger readers doesn't mean that it's necessarily immature exactly, but they might want a more like something that's a little grittier or something like that. I don't know. And Megan says, yes, Abby Jean, those are always fun. Okay, so then I think the next subgenre I have listed is high fantasy. And of all the fantasies, that is my least favorite. Just do not care for it very much. If there are dragons, I tend to kind of check out. I mean, I don't mind if dragons are like more or less a mode of transport, but okay, so now despite all my hours of preparation, some things fell through the cracks. And there was one book I totally forgot to even look for, and there were a couple of books that I looked for them, found them, took them off the shelf, put them on a table, and apparently did not check them out, which I did not realize until I went to get my stack together this afternoon. And so one of the books I forgot to pick up was, and this one is going to definitely be controversial. I think maybe not with this crowd, but in general. Wait, catching up on comments. Megan says, "LOL. I really like high fantasy. That's why Brandon Sanderson works for me. Give me all the complex magic systems." Uh, Megan, give me maps and dragons all day. Well, I want the maps. Oh yes, I want the maps. Make it mappy. Just so many maps. But yeah. Okay. So anyway, so one of the books I thought of and forgot to pick up was Bookshops and Bone Dust by Travis Baldree. That's cozy fantasy, but it's also, what's the tagline for that? High fantasy, low stakes. I realize that not everybody likes it. And it is very, very popular. And some people read it and they're like, why? Why is this so popular? I read Christopher Stasheff when I was younger, so why? Why? Because it actually has been done before, but I think Travis Baldree does it well. I enjoyed it, and I think for some people it would be a good entry, for others not so much. Uh, Megan says, "Oh, I haven't read it yet, but it seemed good to me." Nicole says, "I really want to love cozy fantasy, and I just don't." And then she laughs. LOL. Mhm. Yeah. Well, I really wanna like, yeah, high fantasy, and I just don't. I just Nicole says, "I just get so bored." And Megan says, "LOL." Oh, no, Nicole. Well, you could have something that's kind of both fantasy, fantasy where the stakes are maybe a little higher than just like, "Oh, no, can we open the bookshelf? Oh, can we open the bookstore? Oh, no, will the coffee machine get here on time?" Like Apprentice to the Villain or something like that, where it's still kinda cozy and kind of irreverent, but the stakes are, life and death and maybe the end of the world. Not just, we didn't get our custom swizzle sticks. Okay. So that was the one that I forgot to pick up. Not gonna lie about that. Now, so that cozy can be a good start if people think that they might be um, too anxious. And also the other advantage is that it's short. It's nice and short. So you're not like immediately getting into a total chonker of a book. Abby Jean says, so my husband loves reading lit RPGs, a genre that combines fantasy or sci-fi with RPG role-playing mechanics. Well, Travis Baldree, I think, is like kind of very much into that. Like, I think he's like, I know he's an audio narrator, I believe, and I believe he also has pretty strong involvement with RPGs. I don't know if it's D&D or other kinds of fantasy type RPGs. So that there is that. Okay. And then I have a book which is very highly thought of, and I have liked another book I read by the same author. Oh, Megan says, for cozy fantasy, I recently enjoyed The Spell Shop, which is getting more books, and The Crescent Moon Tea Room also has a sequel coming out later. Nabby Jean says, yes, he has narrated a lot of those. Okay. Yeah, I knew that there was a connection there because yeah, decided to write his own. Anyway, now this is a high fantasy trilogy. Gets a lot of good reviews, and I haven't read it yet. I have it out from the library. I just didn't have time to read it. So I have read another book by this writer that I very much liked. It's not necessarily a good entry point, I'm told, but this book is The Fifth Season by N.K. Jemisin. And again, I haven't read it yet, so I don't know how accessible it is, but oh yeah, look at what we have here. Look at what we have here. We have a map. Oh yeah, it's got a map. And Abby Jean says, all that to say, there's a book on my TBR that is a cozy romantasy lit RPG called I Ran Away to Evil. That sounds fun. Megan says, ooh, I haven't read that either, but it is well loved from what I hear. Abby Jean says, The Spell Shop. Megan, so good. Megan says, all good fantasy books have maps. Anyway, I read The City We Became by N.K. Jemisin, which is urban fantasy, I guess. From what I understand, a lot of people found it kind of not as accessible as it could have been. I liked it. I haven't read the sequel yet, though. Megan says, Abby Jean, I know. I just saw the author announce 2 more books after The Enchanted Greenhouse this year. Mm-hmm. So, yeah, that's who wrote The Spell Shop, if anybody can sling that info my way when you get a chance. Anyway, so I will go ahead and read the back of this book. Again, I'm not recommending it because I haven't read it yet. Abby Jean is like, did she suddenly realize that her parents went to Paris with all of her siblings and she got left at home? Let's see. Megan says Sarah Beth Durst. I think that's the one that Paige was recommending as well. I think Paige really liked that one, if that's the one I'm thinking of. Anyway, but thank you for telling me. This is the way the world ends for the last time. It starts with the great red rift across the heart of the world's sole continent, spewing ash that blots out the sun. It starts with death, with a murdered son and a missing daughter. It starts with betrayal and long dormant wounds rising up to fester. This is the stillness, a land familiar with catastrophe, where the power of the earth is wielded as a weapon, and where there is no mercy. Nicole says, Spell Shop, I liked, but I had to step away because I wasn't in the right mood. South DNF, but I want to try again. One day. Anyway, so that's the 5th season. Again, not recommending it. Haven't read it, but I could be into it. But right now I'm feeling a little burned out on fantasy, to be honest. But then they spent like 36 hours reading fantasy book after fantasy book after fantasy book. So who wouldn't be? Megan says, Nicole, that's fair. It took me a while at the beginning to really get into it. Okay. Now we come into like romantasy. And Abby Jean says, I have heard good things about the 5th season. N.K. Jemisin is a really, really gifted writer. So, okay, romantasy. Now, the series that got me into romantasy is probably not the greatest entry point. And, you may feel free to mock me for loving this as much as I do. I think it was a case of the right book at the right time, but I've come back to it because more books were released in the series. So hang on, comment, catch up. Another good fantasy, Megan says, another good fantasy author is Michael J. Sullivan. Theft of Swords is a fun heist story that's high stakes and funny characters. Great audiobook narrator. Abby Jean says, ooh, thanks, Megan. Okay, so the book that got me into romantasy, and I haven't read a whole lot of romantasy, but I really, really like this, but not everybody does, and it's not necessarily a good entry point, and that was The Plated Prisoner. I read the first book, I think I have the first 2 or 3 books, and I just really got into it. Just really, really liked it. It's slow. There are 6 books, some of which are well in excess of 600 pages. I was into it. I liked it. But again, not necessarily the best place to start. Megan says, still need to try romantasy. I don't know why I'm scared. Nicole says, Plate of Prisoner. Hang on. It is Plated Prisoner because it is a King Midas retelling. So you have the King Midas, and she says, okay. You have the King Midas character, and then you have Oren, who is like his consort. And it is a little silly because the sort of consorts and courtesans and good time ladies of the court are called saddles because they get ridden. I that was kind of cringy, and I really had to struggle to get past that, but I did, and I'm glad I did. Again, not a great entry point necessarily. Um, anyway, so you have the King Midas figure, and he turns everything to, he can touch things. Not everything he touches turns to gold. He can still eat food and drink water and stuff like that, but he can turn things to gold with his touch. And Orin is like completely gold. I think like the only thing about her that isn't gold is like her teeth are still white. So anyway, and then it goes on from there. And yeah, I liked it. And Abby Jean says, Megan, it was what was popular this year. A lot of it was published and a lot of it was marketed the same way, so it's hard to differentiate them sometimes. Yeah. Megan says, yes, I'm not sure what's good and what's not. I like fantasy and I like romance, but I want them both to be done well. Have you tried any contemporary romance that has fantastical elements? Like the X Hex or oh, what was that? Oh shoot, now I can't remember. Oh, it's a series that's about mm, oh gosh, I did it. I had a picture of the first book on my Instagram. I think maybe even the whole series on my Instagram back in October, and I cannot for the life of me remember what it was called or who wrote it or anything like that. Hmm. Well, anyway, but it's like this whole town of witches and whatnot, and they have a whole thing, and there's romance, and it's a series and stuff. Uh, Megan says, "Ooh, no," but it says, "Oh no, I haven't," but that's a good suggestion. Nicole says, "Need to grab my charger in my office. I'm running. Don't share too much." Mhm. Shall we talk about what a sweetheart Nicole is while she's gone? She sent me both a tiara and a book. It was very nice. We did a buddy read. It was Choosing Theo, and yeah, we had a good time with it, and we're looking forward to the next book in the series. It's like, I don't know, 7 volume series or something. Anyway, so that was very nice of her, and she's super supportive of my efforts on YouTube. So I very much appreciate her. And Megan says, LOL, we will wait, Nicole. Abby Jean says, I had a great time last year with the Falling for Fables Cozy Romantasy series. Hang on, while she's doing that, I will look to see in my Instagram what this series is. I can't quite remember. Boy, everybody on Instagram is super excited that Sabrina Carpenter won Grammys. Okay, let's see. Wow, I post a lot. Ah, here we go. Payback's a Witch by Lana Harper. Witches of Thistle Grove is the series. Did you guys catch that? Abby Jean says, it's not super spicy. Megan says, ooh, I haven't heard of that, but I like the sound of it already. Nicole says, back. Yeah, I talked about how nice you are while you were gone. I was talking about you behind your back, and it was all complimentary because you're awesome. And Megan says, oh, thanks, Sock. Oh, and I took advantage of your absence to go back to my Instagram and find out what the series was I was talking about. It's The Witches of Thistle Grove by Lana Harper. I've only read the first book, though, which was, what was it called again? Payback's a Witch. But it is, yeah. Mm-hmm. And also, Megan, a novel love story about which you have heard me speak before is kind of like a magical realism contemporary kind of deal. So it's got, sort of, you could think of it as fantastical elements. I wouldn't necessarily, I don't know. Yeah, I guess it's a fantasy. Sure, you bet. Why not? Okay. So yeah, we did not pursue anything else while you were gone, Nicole. We waited for you to come back. Okay, so yeah, we were talking about romantasy, and I was talking about The Plated Prisoner and how it's not necessarily a great entry point for people, but for me, it was just like the right book at the right time. And I'm trying to capture that lightning in a bottle again. I know some people are very fond of One Dark Window. I personally couldn't get into it. That was me, not the book. That was the energy I was bringing to the situation. And Abby Jane says, "Ooh, love T. Kingfisher for fantasy and romantasy." And Nicole says, "I want to read her Beauty and the Beast retelling." You know, the only T. Kingfisher I've read is like, what is it, The Hollow Places and House with Good Bones. So it's like more along the lines of horror rather than romantasy. I'll have to pursue more of that because I did enjoy those books and I like her writing style. So their writing style. Mhm. Okay. Now, one book that came up, and this is kind of like this is urban fantasy, portal fantasy, romantasy, YA, and that is Tithe by Holly Black. Oh, and Megan says, "Oof." I keep leaning forward, and like all you can see is the tiara because I need to get close up so I can see what people are saying. Ooh, Falling for Fables. I have this on my. This is Megan. I have this on my TBR. I didn't realize that's what this series was called, but I recognize the covers. Abby Jane says, "Yeah, excellent, Megan," or maybe it was excellent, Megan, but I prefer to think of her doing her Mr. Burns. Excellent. Nicole says, Bryony and Roses is the retelling. I heard about it just yesterday. That's the T. Kingfisher Beauty and the Beast. Well, we know if it's a Beauty and the Beast retelling and Nicole hasn't already read it, she's going to be on it. Just don't read the Anne Rice one. Oh my God. That's just. Don't do it. Don't do it. Oh no, that was Sleeping Beauty. So yeah, you're safe. Just don't do it though. Okay. So yeah, Tithe by Holly Black. This was published. Oh, shoot. Yeah, I think Every Heart of Doorway was 2020. Fifth season was published in 2015. It's the first of three, and it is. Oh, it's got an appendix with a glossary of terms commonly used. In, oh my goodness, it's got more than one appendix. Oh, okay, but the text itself is 450 with supplementary materials. And Abby G says, if you like high spice, Layla Faye's full-length novels, Draco and Trickster, are so good. I do like a bit of spice. Mm-hmm. And with me, if there's a lot of spice and I'm not into the way they write the spice, then I just skim through it and move ahead. I am not offended by its very presence. But if they do it well, yeah, I enjoy it. Okay, so Tithe by Holly Black. This is YA. Hoo-hoo. My library, one of the libraries, I went to 4 different libraries. Yeah, 4 different libraries. And some of them have big old stickers that say YA in big letters, and some of them don't. This was 2002. So I think she had already published at this point. I know she has the was it the Cruel Prince that some people really like? I hear a lot about it. Haven't read it yet. Okay. Yeah, it says at this point she's the New York Times bestselling author of the modern fairy tales, Tithe, Valiant, and Ironside, the Poison Eaters and Other Stories, and the Curse Workers series. Okay, so yeah, she's been around for a while then. Okay. In the realm of the fairy, spelled, Faerie, 16-year-old Kay is a modern nomad. Fierce and independent, she drifts from place to place with her mother's rock band until an ominous attack forces Kay back to her childhood home. There, amid the industrial blue-collar New Jersey backdrop, Kay soon finds herself an unwilling pawn in an ancient and violent power struggle between two rival fairy kingdoms, a struggle that could very well mean her death. Best-selling author Holly Black's enormously powerful voice weaves teen angst, riveting romance, and capriciously diabolical fairy folk into an enthralling, engaging, altogether original reading experience. Well, maybe it was original and fresh and different. In 2002, I think when I read it, and I think it's not necessarily that original. That might be just because there's been like 23 years of publishing in between then and now that, or maybe it was kind of derivative even at the time. That's like the marketing blurb. So, okay. So that's not particularly long. It is Yeah, it's 300 pages. It's YA, it goes quickly, so that's one of the things why people might enjoy it. And Megan wants to know, has anyone here read A Fate Inked in Blood? The cover really caught my eye in the bookstore and I wanted to read it, but was wondering how good it was. It seems romanticy is either loved or hated. I have heard good things about it and I have heard bad things about it. I have not yet read it myself. I think one of the things I want to read that I haven't read yet is the Stephanie Garber Caraval, and I can't remember what the follow up. There was like the Caraval trilogy, and then there was like the follow up something else trilogy that I think you're supposed to read Caraval first, or I don't know if they're associated or if it's like a real, yeah, I don't know. But I do want to read that. It's on my list. I just haven't gotten to it yet. And Nicole says I have not, but I have read Bridge Kingdom, and it was 5 stars for me. And Megan says I've only read House on the Cerulean Sea, but really loved it. I don't know if that's loved it or loathed it because there's a consonant or two missing. Uh, Nicole says, I plan to read Trader Queen in March. Megan says, Nicole, good to know, thanks. And Nicole says, by the same author. And Abby Jean says, I want to give him another tree. Oh, I skipped a comment from Abby Jean because she was saying, Megan, have you read TJ Klune? I DNF'd the 2 of his books I picked up, but I think you might enjoy it. Cozy fantasy with subtle romances. Okay. Abby Jean says, I want to give him another try. Nicole says, ooh, just beware the snakes. Watch out for snakes. That's a Mystery Science Theater 3000 joke. Yeah, it's never mind. Nicole Carter says, I am scared to death of snakes, and there were a lot of snakes. Snakes! Why did it have to be snakes? Megan says, LOL, Nicole, thanks. I'm good with snakes. Yeah. Okay. So I don't even know what I was doing. I fell down the snake hole. Okay. The next category I have are fantasy books that are based specifically on fairy tales. So this Beauty and the Beast retelling business made for a nice segue had I but known to take advantage of it. Time for the pause that refreshes. Okay. Now here's one. I read it and I liked it, but I didn't necessarily get everything I could have out of it. Oh, wait, Nicole says, lots of snakes on books I am interested in. I literally have to cover the book with something else to pick it up. Bad real life snake stories in my life growing up in Florida. Ooh, okay. Well, I think I'm going to have a book that does have snakes on the cover, so I will be sure to warn you before I start waving it all over the place. If we get to it, we might have to break this into 2 parts. Okay. So Nicole says, just give me a heads up. I will do that. I'll double check the subsequent books that I hold up before I hold them up, just in case. Abby Jean says, so many books to check out already. Okay, now this book, well, I think it's a dragon's tail rather than a snake, but anyway, now this book is one that I remember. I kind of liked the idea, but the execution, well, it wasn't that the execution was poor. This is the okay, my hand is covering up a thing that might be a snake or might be a dragon's tail, and that is a Twisted Tale anthology. And this is part of there was the Twisted Tale series, which was licensed by Disney, and it was different writers writing sort of alternate versions of Disney fairy tale movies. This is actually fairly recent. This is copyright 2023, and like, they did like I don't know, there was one about like, what if Megara Meg from Hercules was the one who became divine, and so on. The thing is that I have not watched very many Disney movies, like pretty much any of them, or at least none of the fairy tale ones. So I was kind of a little lost reading this. However, I think it might make a great entry point for some people because first off, short stories, and they can skip and they can just read the ones they're interested in. Um, if they are, younger than I am, they probably grew up watching at least some of these movies. So, yeah. So this might make a good entry point. I'm not just picking the stuff I like. Megan says, Nicole, now that you mention it, snakes do come up a lot on fantasy covers. Okay, so I will read the, another thing that fantasy covers are, they have light prints on a black background, which is kind of hard for me to read. Okay, edited by New York Times bestselling author Elizabeth Lim. That's Lim as in Mary. This Twisted Tale anthology features 16 twisted short stories with new takes on fan favorite Disney films. Swoon as Ariel and Eric meet right after the Little Mermaid saves her prince. Join Tiana and Naveen on a race to get back to Maldonia. Take a ride on a pirate spaceship with Jim Hawkins and uncover just what power Tinkerbell's pixie dust holds. Written by veteran Twisted Tale authors Elizabeth Lim, Liz Braswell, Jen Kalanita, and Farah Roshan, and featuring captivating contributions from best-selling authors like Livia Blackburn, M.K. England, Nicole Astow, and Christina Perez. This collection, filled with magic, intrigue, and charm, is a must-have for Disney and fairy tale fans alike. So yeah, like I said, I didn't get as much out of this as I could have because I'm familiar with the fairy tales that are the source material, a lot of them that are the source material for the movies, but I'm not familiar with the movies. So I was like reading it, I was going, huh? But they were well written, and like I said, for people who have grown up with the Disney movies, then this might be a good thing. So we have in the table of contents, each story has like a little summary of like what is the change that they're making in the story. So we have, what if Snow White learned magic? What if Mulan became the emperor's advisor? What if Remy had met Colette first? What if Anastasia had a change of heart? See, I thought it was Anastasia, like the lost Empress of Russia, last Duchess, Grand Duchess of Russia. But then I remembered that was not a Disney movie. So it turns out I think she's a character from Cinderella, apparently, one of the stepsisters, maybe. What if Mufasa gave up his throne? What if Jim Hawkins joined the pirates? What if history wasn't quite right about the legend of Robin Hood? He wasn't a fox? Okay. What if Eric met Ariel after she rescued him? What if Tinkerbell was working for Captain Hook? I think, wasn't that the first book in the Twisted series by Emily McIntyre? Yeah, I like that. Let's see. What if the triplets visited the witch? I guess. Sure. What if Madame Mim and Merlin went to school together? They didn't. What if Belle had to take her father's place at the fair? What if Hercules' first day as god didn't go as planned? What if Bambi didn't want to be the next great prince of the forest? Okay. What if Aurora knew the truth about her curse? Okay, so like I said, I think this would probably be a great time for somebody. Just, I was a little puzzled by some of what I was reading, but they were well written. So yeah. And Megan says, oh, that sounds really fun. I definitely don't know my Disney movies. Abby Jean says there is a Disney movie called Anastasia. Yeah, that was with voices by, I think, Meg Ryan and John Cusack. For some reason, I was thinking that was Don Bluth and that it wasn't Disney, but maybe, obviously, I was mistaken. That will happen. Okay, so that's the fairy tale. Oh, and here's one that I had. Abby Jean says, I enjoyed Emily McIntyre's Never After series, dark and spicy. I need to read Hex. I have enjoyed it as well. Hex, I think it says that the most recent one. I've read all of them. The only one I didn't particularly care for was, I think it was the second one that was like the Lion King deal. And it was like this sort of fantasy, late 19th, early 20th century European court milieu, which for some reason I was just not into. I would have preferred to have read it as a contemporary. And Abby Jean says, except for Crossed, I DNF'd that one. Was that the Hunchback of Notre Dame one? Because NGL, I kind of liked it. Yeah. It was just so effed up that I had to be into it. Okay, so oh yeah, another fairy tale one that I is in the mystery stack that didn't end up coming home with me was it's science fiction. It's intersecting science fiction, fantasy, fairy tale retelling, and that was Cinder by Marissa Meyer, YA. And Abby Jean says yes. Yeah, I can see how you might be like, not. That is not for me. Okay, now 12 Dancing Princesses and House of Salt and Sorrows, which I just read for the first time this weekend and really liked. I started it and I was just like kind of not into it. I felt like it was draggy and I wasn't looking forward to going back to reading it. But it turned out that was just the energy I was bringing to it. And when I gave myself some time away from reading in general and from reading fantasy in particular, I really liked it. And I flew through it. I finished it. I read up to halfway through before I went to sleep last night. And then I read the rest of it this morning and I liked it. And Nicole says, I badly want to read Cinder. I liked it. It's one of those books where they have this royalty structure for, I'm not sure why, just because royalty is fun, I guess. And it's also because it's YA and some YA books, not all, of course, but some have these like teenagers who are running entire governments and large corporations and stuff. So there's an element of that to it. So, but I was into it. I enjoyed it. I read like the whole series and everything. And let's see. Okay. Megan says, "Is it dark? I'm interested in it, but don't like too dark." Yeah, it's dark adjacent. I would say it's not like S.E. Kincaid Nemesis series where it's like literally the protagonists are committing genocide, and it's like, oh well, well that kind of sucked. So it's not like that kind of dark. And Nicole says, "Is Cinder political at all?" Well, yeah, there is this like they talk about. I mean, it's not specifically political about like Republicans, Democrats, that kind of political, but it's political in that they're getting into like court intrigue and rival governments and rival corporations and stuff like that. So if you just can tend to check out of that, it's not going to be necessarily what you want in a book. Nicole says, "I get bonus points for my reading challenge if the books I read have political elements." Okay. Well, like I said, it's political in the sense of there are political maneuverings and court intrigue and so on, but it's not like it is not like fascist versus democracy advocates or something like that. It's more just generally political. And Nicole says, "Cool, moving that to March." And she says, "Perfect." Okay. So I enjoyed House of Salt and Sorrows. I know a lot of people talk about that. So I will go ahead. Oh, and this is 400 pages. I should know that. I just read it. Jeez. And I believe it was, when did it come out? 2019. Okay, here we go. Annalee lives a sheltered life at Highmoor, a manor by the sea. Oh, I'm sorry. I thought that was a full sentence. It's not a full sentence. Annalee lives a sheltered life at Highmoor, a manor by the sea, with her sisters and their father and stepmother. Once there were 12, but loneliness fills the grand halls now that 4 of the girls' lives have been cut short. Each death was more tragic than the last: the plague, a plummeting fall, a drowning, a slippery plunge. and there are whispers throughout the surrounding villages that the family is cursed by the gods. Disturbed by a series of ghostly visions, Anna Lee becomes increasingly suspicious that her sister's deaths were no accident. The girls have been sneaking out every night to attend glittering balls, dancing until dawn in silk gowns and shimmering slippers, and Anna Lee isn't sure whether to try to stop them or join their forbidden trysts. Because who, or what, are they really dancing with? When Annalee's involvement with a mysterious stranger who has secrets of his own intensifies, it's a race to unravel the darkness that has fallen over her family before it claims her next. Yeah, and this is like totally takes place. There's no intersection with the world of ours, with this world, with our world. It's yeah, so it's totally fantasy based on 12 dancing princesses, but it's like takes it way beyond anything that Hans Christian Andersen ever wrote about. And let's see. Abby Jean says, "Sock. Did you say if House and Salt and Sorrows is dark?" And Megan says, "Abby Jean, thanks." Okay. Somebody was asking if it was if something was dark, and I started talking about Cinder. I'm sorry if you meant House of Salt and Sorrows. It's fairly dark. I mean, you've got like dead people. It's like really about grief, essentially. When you boil it all down, that's what it's about. It's about grief. So, uh, yeah. Sorry, this is like I've got the. That's a disadvantage of working with library books is that they've got these plastic dust jacket protectors, and so they can get very glarish. Uh, Megan says, Megan says, "Oh, okay, maybe it's not for me then." And she says, "It's a pretty cover, though. It is. It's a very nice cover. I took its picture this morning for Instagram. I'm not sure when I'm going to post it, but I'm very pleased with how my picture turned out as well. Yeah, it is about grief. So if you don't want to deal with that, do not read it. Okay, so that was okay. That was Fairy Tale. Now we've been at it for about an hour. Should we? And I still have. Hold on a second. Let me show you all of that to go. So should we call it a night and do a part two, or what do you want to do? Keep going. Abby Jean says, "I like that you pick up the library books for these." Well, I try to. I have this theory that YouTube is really for people who enjoyed show and tell when they were children, and I just feel like it's nice to have something to hold up. Megan says, "I'm good for maybe another half an hour." Okay, let's do that. Let me take a look and see if. Okay, yeah, actually, we can press on until we get to horror fantasy, and we can kick that into science fiction and horror for the next live stream, and then just pick up, and then that'll fit in nicely. And Abby Jean says, "I would like to mention a book real quick. Also, I can keep going if the others are down." And Nicole says, "I'm good either way, just resting with fever tonight." Okay. Yeah, Abby Jean, please do share. Yeah, like I said, we'll press on, and I mean, I do have all of these books, but we are more than halfway through. So we'll see how this goes. And if we have to, we can kick a couple of these over into the science fiction and horror that I was planning to do next anyway. So yeah. Okay. So while Abby Jean's typing, okay, we have another book. I do have one of the books, and the other one was in that mysterious stack. And this is, we're looking at dark fantasy, which I mean, a lot of it is. House of Salt and Sorrow. Again, there's a lot of overlap. House of Salt and Sorrow, I would call dark fantasy, and it's also fairy tale retelling, and it's also has a romantic element to it. So, okay, this one is a YA. and it's the first book. I think there were only two. It had a sequel. I don't think it went beyond that. And that is The Wrath and the Dawn by Renee Adia. Let's see. And this is YA, and it was published in 2015. This is a 2020 reissue. And it is 413 pages. Okay. Yeah, if I didn't say, Abby Jean, feel free to mention your book, the book that you wanted to mention, whenever. Okay. So this is The Wrath and the Dawn. Khalid, the 18-year-old caliph of Khorasan, is a monster. Each night he takes a new wife, only to have her killed by sunrise. Shahrazad is the first volunteer to become Khalid's bride. She vows to stop his reign of terror for the friends she lost and for all those who perished before her. Incredibly, Shahrazad manages to survive her first morning, and then the next. Night after night, she mesmerizes the caliph with her storytelling, at once buying time and digging deeper into the elusive boy king's past. If Khalid is truly the murderous madman everyone says he is, how does Shahrazad find it so easy to fall for him? Again, fairy tale retelling in the sense, or folklore retelling, because Arabian Nights. Okay, we got a comment. Abby Jean says, sorry, typing. Yeah, I figured. They get there. So anyway, so it is also kind of folklore retelling because of the Arabian Nights. And I liked it. I read it probably about 3 or 4 years ago. I haven't had a chance to reread it, but I did like it. And it's YA, and I think it's nice to get into a kind of different kind of folklore tradition. I mean, I know a lot of the Arabian Nights is basically Richard Burton, the explorer, not the actor, kind of bastardizing what he knew, but still. Okay, Abby Jean's laying some wisdom on us. I just read an adult fantasy recently, Jade City. I think Kung Fu Mafia with magic. Like if The Godfather and Karate Kid had a baby, it would be this book. I gave it 4.5 stars, but I found it a bit too gritty for me. Reading it did remind me of why I love romance so much, though. It was well written and engaging, but I didn't feel good while reading it. I realized romance is one of the only genres that is feel good. That's Fonda Lee, I think was the name of the person who wrote that. Is it Fonda Lee? I want to say. I could be wrong. Yeah, I wasn't sure if I really wanted to read. I don't know, because I'm okay with mafia romance, but mafia romance plus fantasy, and you've got a few too many things that I'm iffy to, not very interested in. And Abby Jean says, yes, Fonda Lee. Nicole says, yes, this book is all over the place, and I was on the fence about it. Yeah, you were on the fence about it while you were reading it, or you were on the fence about reading it at all? Because like I kind of thought about it, and I was like, you know what? I think it's got a couple of sequels, and I was just like, I don't know that I really want to invest a whole lot of time into this. And yeah. Megan says, ooh. Oh, another fantasy book I loved is The Stardust Thief. It's based on Arabian folklore and has fun stories within: a girl magician and a prince and a genie on a quest. Sounds like a joke. Did they walk into a bar at any point? Because that would be hilarious. Nicole says, picking it up. I'll maybe grab a library copy one day when it is just laying around and not in the limelight. Yeah. A lot of times when these books, everybody loves these books, I'm like almost afraid to try them because I'm like, what if I don't like it? Will I not be allowed to sit at the cool kids table? Because I'm currently not. Yeah, I'm at the cool kids table. My mom says I'm cool. Like anything by Sarah J. Maas. Well, I did try to read, what was the first book in Crescent City, House of Blood and Earth? I tried to read that. I read about 50 or 60 pages, so like 1%. And I was just like, I was reading it and I kept looking at the book. And I even finally went online because I was reading this book and I was absolutely convinced that I'd accidentally picked up the second book in the series. And I was like, no. And I kept looking it up and I was like, no, this is the first book. This is the first book. You are, yes, this is it. And I was just like, you know what? No, just no. And I think her other work might be more accessible, but I just feel like there's a lot of pressure to like it. And I don't know that I can. I, Abby Jean says, that sounds sweet, Megan. And Megan says, well said, Abby. I haven't read that series, but I can't do dark or grim dark fantasy. Reading romance definitely makes me feel happy. At least not the dark romance. And Abby Jean says, yeah, I'm a party pooper when it comes to SJM. And Megan says, haven't read SJM yet either. Yeah, like I said, I really did try with House of Blood and Earth, and no, I just was like, it's acting like I already know who these people are and what they want out of life, and I don't. I don't. I mean, I can understand not wanting to info dump, but some information might be useful. Just saying. Okay. So, so yes. Oh, the other book that was in the magical stack that may or may not have existed, that lives in a permanent state of uncertainty, like that cat, was Strange the Dreamer by Lonnie Taylor and the sequel Muse of Nightmares. Really, really liked that a lot. I liked the first book better than the second, but I liked them both. But I really, really liked the first book. And I don't have a summary to read because I don't have the book. I was just looking at my teeth because it's weird that they're picking up the green from the lipstick. Interesting. I know I look like I spend a fortune at the dentist, but no, I have great teeth. They're just kind of, green. Uh, and Abby Jean says there's Dubcon, dubious consent, and Akatar made Megan, you weren't. Megan says, isn't all her works connected? So maybe the Crescent City characters were from a different series. I don't know. I don't know. I thought it was supposed to be a new thing, but maybe, okay. Megan says, Abby Jean, thanks. That's what worries me. Yeah, that would be worrying. Mhm. Yeah, you don't want to get, slapped with dubious consent or non-consent that's dressed up and glamorized and romanticized. If that's not what you're looking for, you want to know ahead of time. Okay. So, yeah, so Strange the Dreamer by Lonnie Taylor. Actually, hang on. Yeah. Anyway, again, I don't have the book, so I can't read the summary. There's this orphan, and he travels across the desert in order to get a job in a library, I think. I read it a while ago, and I don't remember everything about it. It's good. That's what I remember. Uh, Abby G says, yeah, that's why I couldn't get down with it. I can do dark romance sometimes, obviously, but it has to be done well, and I have to know what I'm getting myself into. Yeah, yeah. I mean, like, yeah. I can tolerate quite a lot if I know what it is. And also if the author is clearly um not, I don't want to say condoning the behavior exactly, but if the author's like, oh yeah, this is some effed up nonsense, like, God of Malice or something. This is seriously effed up nonsense. Like, this is just no. This is not anything at all that I would ever condone in real life. And because there's some books like, um, where they're just like, oh yeah, and this happened and that happened and she didn't really want to do it but she did and it's fine, yay, heteronormativity. And it's just like, no, it doesn't have to be like that, and you didn't have to do that, and you also didn't have to do that without warning me that that was what you were doing. Okay, I'm getting kind of tired and punchy. Uh, okay, so let's see. So Abby Jean says, yes, suck. It has to be on purpose. And the author has to know that it's problematic and persist, as opposed to these authors who just write it and they're just like, yeah, this is fine. No problem. Nothing to see here. Just darn good times. Abby Jean says, if that makes sense. Yes, it does. I think what I said maybe doesn't make sense, but it had a certain internal logic, I'd like to think. Okay, moving on. Are we ready? Abby Jean says 100. I just thought 100, like, yeah, that didn't really make a whole lot of sense. Okay, now let's take a look at some urban fantasy and also academic fantasy. I have two, and one of them, okay, Nicole, this is where you want to look away because this is a very snaky cover. So I'm going to hold this up for Abby Jean and Megan and Nicole. Are you ready? Please indicate that you have closed your eyes by closing your eyes. The book is Ninth House by Leigh Bardugo. And okay, gonna count down from 5 before I hold it up, and I will tell you when you can look again. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. I'm holding it up. And I am no longer holding it up. I am going to Happy Jesus, I DNF the Ninth House. Damn. Okay, I'm going to hold up the spine, Nicole, so you can see it because the spine is fine. It's just text. Oops. Nicole. Ah, yes, Ninth House. It wasn't for me. I really liked it. Okay, here's the thing about Ninth House. This is maybe why it hit me quite well, why I liked it. It has for one thing, it has a map. Oh yeah, it's a map of New Haven. I wanted to love it, says Nicole. Maybe I need to give it another go another time. Or maybe you just let it slide out of your life. Okay, let us see. What do we have here? So anyway, yeah, this is Yale University, downtown New Haven. And it was kind of hilarious because I was reading this. I actually went to graduate school in Yale. Let's see, 12. I went to graduate school at Yale, but my graduate school was not close to downtown. It's over here somewhere. Abby Jean says, or maybe. Okay, Abby Jean says, Nicole, I don't think you like fantasy, and that's 100% okay. And she says, or maybe you and I just don't like a lot of hyped books. Well, anyway, what was funny about this was it's about Yale secret societies, sort of. And I actually, when I started graduate school at Yale, we had this like there was a walking tour of the different secret society houses. And the other thing is, while I was reading this, I was in the jury pool and got called for jury duty in the federal courthouse in New Haven. And I was kind of like, okay, well, I'm not excited about jury duty. Don't hate jury duty or anything, but I'm not terribly excited about driving all the way to New Haven. But, maybe during the breaks, I can go wandering around and just enjoy wandering around downtown New Haven. But then, as it turned out, they didn't need me, and I got credit for jury duty and didn't actually have to do it. So that was kind of interesting. And Nicole says, "Ha! I suppose not. I really want to, but I just haven't found that special book yet. I'm too much a romantic. I think when I lose the beautiful romances, I check out. Well, that's why maybe we can try to think of some fantasy instead of romantasy, rather contemporaries or historicals with a fantasy element. Or you don't have to like fantasy. It's totally legit not to like fantasy. You heard it here first. Okay. So I don't know. We haven't heard from Megan in a while. So should I read the summary? Megan, do you want the summary? Or are you guys like, because Abby Jean hated it, Nicole DNF'd it. Megan's like, LOL, hi. Well, she finished her chicken and pasta and then it was time for dessert. Sorry, I was in the kitchen, she says. Dessert. Anyway, do you want me to read the summary for Ninth House, or is Ninth House like not your deal? I'd say it's we have one person who hated it, one person who DNF'd it, and one person who liked it, but probably mostly because there was a local connection. Okay, so next up we have. Oh, she says, I honestly don't know anything about it. Okay, well, if you guys can bear with me for a second, I'll just read this for you. It takes place at Yale University. And it's academic urban fantasy. Galaxy Alex Stern is the most unlikely member of Yale's freshman class. Raised in the Los Angeles hinterlands by a hippie mom, Alex dropped out of school early into a world of shady drug dealer boyfriends, dead-end jobs, and much, much worse. In fact, by age 20, she is the sole survivor of a horrific unsolved multiple homicide. Some might say she's thrown her life away. But at her hospital bed, Alex is offered a second chance to attend one of the world's most prestigious universities on a full ride. What's the catch and why her? Okay, Nicole says she wants to hear it again anyway, so that's cool. Still searching for answers, Alex arrives in New Haven, tasked by her mysterious benefactors with monitoring the activities of Yale's secret societies. Their 8 windowless tombs, that's what they call the buildings that secret societies are in. I mean, like, that's a real life thing. I think Lee Bardugo might have actually been in one of them. Their 8 windowless tombs are the well-known haunts of the rich and powerful, from high-ranking politicos to Wall Street's biggest players. But their occult activities are more sinister and more extraordinary than any paranoid imagination might conceive. They tamper with forbidden magic. They raise the dead. There's like a little piece of tape on the plastic covering. They raise the dead, and sometimes they prey on the living. Megan says, that doesn't sound like my thing. Yeah. Yeah. Probably not. Probably not. So, yeah. Like I said, maybe I liked it just for like the local interest and because like I'm familiar with these places in real life or something. Nicole has a book question. I think it is romantasy. Has everyone read A Fragile Enchantment? Any thoughts? I'm not familiar. Maybe Abby Jean and Megan can help out. Okay, and the other one, and this one, I liked the first book, and I picked up the second book and just wasn't into it. I was just like, I think I like the book as a standalone. Abby Jean says nope, and Megan says haven't heard of it. Nicole, you stumped the experts. Anyway, and that's Legendborn by Tracy Dion. Nicole says okie dokie. And I say okie dokie artichoke. Because I'm cool. Once again, my mom said so. Although she might have been being sarcastic. After her, oh, for Pete's sake. See, they keep putting tape. After her mother, she died in a car accident. 16-year-old, I can't even see her name. Ivy, I think. No, River? Oh, for Pete's sake. Bree. And Nicole says, Allison Soft is the author. It just looks so beautiful. It intrigued me. Soft is the German word for juice. That's what I have to contribute to this conversation. Okay. After her mother died in a car accident, 16-year-old Bree Matthews wants nothing to do with her family memories or childhood home. A residential program for bright high schoolers at UNC Chapel Hill seems like a perfect escape until Bree witnesses a magical attack her very first night on campus. A flying demon feeding on human energies. A secret society, of so-called legend-born students who hunt the creatures down, and a mysterious teenage mage who calls him mage, Mada, the MAGE, they do magic, who calls himself a Merlin and who attempts and fails to wipe Bree's memory of everything she saw. The mage's failure reveals Bree's own unique magic and a buried memory with a hidden connection. The night her mother died, another Merlin was at the hospital. Now that Bree knows there's more to her mother's death than what's on the police report, she'll do whatever it takes to find out the truth, even if that means infiltrating the Legendborn as one of their initiates. She recruits Nick, a self-exiled Legendborn with his own grudge against the group, and their reluctant partnership pulls them deeper into the society's secrets and closer to each other. But when the Legendborn reveal themselves as the descendants of King Arthur's knights and explain that a magical war is coming, Bree has to decide how far she'll go for the truth and whether she should use her magic to take the society down or join the fight. Okay. Nicole says, yes, I love that book. Yay! The Arthurian retelling. It's retelling, or I mean, it draws on Arthurian legend and also some other stuff. Well, loosely, not really. Okay, there she goes. Well, loosely, not really a retelling at all. LO, inspired by? Yeah, yeah. And Megan says, yes, want to read this one. Legendborn. Oh, I forgot to check for snakes. There aren't any. It's safe. But man, if you're terrified by dollar bills, there's the pyramid. You're terrified by dollar bills or the Nicaraguan flag, I believe, have the pyramid eye on them. Anyway, Nicole says, I devoured that book. Cool beans. Yeah, but when I went to pick up the sequel, Blood Marked, I was just not that into it. And so I put it down because I was like, I'm not going to force myself to read it. I'll come back to it, like maybe, when I'm more in the mood. And I haven't yet, but I probably will. And I think this is where I got to call it off call it a night because I'm getting really, really tired. Hey, we found one you like, Nicole. Nicole says, I felt the same way, Sock. Abby Jean. Yes. Okay. I'm like getting kind of tired here and I'm losing my voice. So we still have historical fantasy, horror fantasy, and also a couple of nonfiction books to look forward to. So that'll be part 2, and we'll fold that into, I think, science fiction and horror, or maybe we'll just fold it into horror and science fiction will get its own episode. What do you guys think? Nicole says, yep, go rest. Great live show, Sock. I like being challenged with new book genres. Well, I'm going to keep doing this for a while because, originally I was like, oh, yeah, I'll just do an episode. And now it's like, yeah, I can't even get through all of fantasy subgenres in one live stream that went for an hour and a half. So, Abby Jean says, depends on how many books you want to cover, I guess. Megan says, I'm good to end now. Loved all the book talk. Yeah. And I will see you see you before then because there's B's live show tomorrow and there's midweek motivation on Wednesday and then so on and so forth. B again on Friday, I believe. I think she's doing her Tuesday, Friday this week. I know last week she had to do Monday because of the whole meeting situation. Nicole says, I'm going to plot my strategy for March reading so my team wins the reading challenge. Abby Jean says, night, ladies. So happy to join. So happy to have you. Thank you so much for coming. And Nicole says, well, hopefully. It's all in good fun, I would hope. So yeah. So we'll pick up with historical fantasy, horror fantasy, and some nonfiction, and segue into horror and possibly even some science fiction if we're feeling ambitious. And again, that's not next Monday, but the Monday after, which I believe is the 17th. And Megan says, good night, everyone. Great job, Sock. Thank you. And she says, feel better, Nicole. Yes, we all hope you feel better. Yeah. And just remind your children of this come Halloween or even Easter basket time and be like, yes, you gave me your germs, so I get your jelly beans. It's just tell them I don't make the rules. I just live them. And Abby Jean says, yes, rest Oh, Megan says, I won't be here for the 17th. Nuts. Well, hopefully the YouTube playback isn't like compromised audio like it's been the last couple of times, and you'll be able to watch the playback without too much hassle. And Abby Jean says, yes, rest up, Nicole. Yes. And my own voice is starting to go, so I think it's probably time to have some broth or cup noodles or something like that, which will be nice. Abby Jean says, thanks up. Thank you all for coming, and I appreciate it. And hopefully I'll see at least some of you, if not all of you, on Midweek Motivation on Wednesday at 2. Oh, and of course tomorrow again, B's live stream at, I think she's at 9:30 tomorrow. So yeah, see you then. Bye.